Drew Wrigley. He's a leader for the state of North Dakota who has experience in numerous aspects of government, from Deputy Chief of Staff for then Governor Hogan to his presidential appointment for U.S. Attorney for the District of North Dakota, and now his current position as Lieutenant Governor. I consider him to be my most accomplished friend, and besides his list of professional accomplishments, Drew is also has a very masterful sense of humor, a beautiful family, and a heart full. Please help me welcome him to his
Thanks.
presentation.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was sure nice. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And that sounds like Todd wrote that. And then the heart of gold part, especially Todd. It's very nice. Yeah, Jennifer and I have known each other for a long time. Jennifer, every time I see you, I kind of feel, well, I kind of am a grandparent now because I turned 50 this year. And so now I'm kind of like a grandparent, although our kids are still tiny. But so Jennifer, when I was the U.S. Attorney for North Dakota, Jennifer was an intern with us in the office, student employee in the office. And now when I run into her, she's this grown businesswoman and a mom, and I'm like, man, I'm old and I'm slowing down. So Jennifer, keep at it. One of us is going to make something of ourselves someday. We just got to. I think we know that. You've got more time. You've got a lot more time than I have. So, well, good morning. Speaking of age, I don't know if I brought reading glasses, but if not, good thing that when you're the lieutenant governor, you're your own speechwriter. So you write in crayon, and then you can read it even when you're 50. I think I can basically read it. But thanks for the opportunity to come in here, and I'm glad that there's a clock up there because I will try to keep it to the I will keep it to the allotted time. But I'd also like, do you do question and answer at all?
Yeah, if you want to do that at the end.
I'll pull up a little short at the end, and maybe we can do some question and answer if anything that I've said is made you think about some questions you might have, or leave some questions unanswered. Todd thinks that that's impossible in a half an hour, but I do want to thank you again, and thanks for participating in this great program. Jennifer was just, I was wondering if I'm familiar with the program, but I was wondering whether this was just a side group of it, or because they had made it specific to government, and it sounds like this is just one of your many stops around the community as you familiarize yourself with a lot of different areas in Bismarck-Mandan area, really, and beyond. And I think it's a great program, and I commend you for doing this. I know it takes a lot of time away from your normal job, I guess I'll call it, but I know that you'll find value in the program. I'm sure that you already are. So thanks for doing it. It's an extraordinary time in North Dakota. I've been lieutenant governor. That's not why it's an extraordinary time, but I've been the lieutenant governor for a little over 5 years. And things have changed. Depending on what your vantage point is, pretty dramatically, the dynamic a little bit has changed in the state, in government, and what people are talking about in the government, and what they're expecting of their government, and then looking up ahead. It's startling almost when you look at it. Just if you read the headlines every day, if you think of that as government, and if you think of that as politics, that's somewhat startling. But we are I don't care what oil prices are. We are still very much in an extraordinary period in North Dakota, absolutely extraordinary period. And I always contrast it with when I graduated from the University of North Dakota. I went there undergraduate, and I graduated in 1988. And I think about that time when we were getting out of school and people were talking about what opportunities there were in the state of North Dakota, and what were the options for you. And I got to tell you, when I was graduating that year, I knew I was going off to law school, and so I was going to be moving to D.C. to go to law school. But so many of my friends were really, their big choices were, do I want to move to Minneapolis-St. Paul, or would I rather move to Eagan, or Plymouth, Minnesota, or would I go to Wisconsin, or did they want to go to Missouri? I mean, the options were not as great. And a lot of people were looking for an opportunity here, and some found them. But too many of my friends come back every fall still from other states, and we go on our annual pheasant hunt. And I have to tell you that all they want to talk about is the economy in North Dakota and how things are going here. And so many, now again, I keep mentioning it, maybe I'm self-conscious, but I am old. And no, we're all off, and they're kind of enrooted in those communities in different states, but they miss North Dakota. And almost to a person, they say, gosh, if I could flash back about 10, 15 years and start on a different track, I would love to come home. It's a different time. It's a really dynamic time in the state. And I think that's, just even this group, I'm sure you all have all sorts of different backgrounds and work backgrounds and everything else in what you're working on, but it's incredible to show the engagement in the state. I think people do have a sense that this is a truly extraordinary time, and not just economically. I just mean opportunity-wise for people in the state and what the future might hold up ahead for themselves or for their family. We make a mistake, I think, in with the newspapers and everything else when we think of it. Well, it's really going well if the state has a lot of revenue. And if they have a lot of revenue, then they can do fun stuff, and then they can cut ribbons, and that'll be really exciting. That means everything's going well. Well, the price of oil has gone down quite dramatically, and it's staying there. And so the national media will talk about North Dakota as in. I read a couple weeks ago we're in a not a depression, but they did say we're in a recession, which is very sad. And I don't remember everything from my economics days at the University of North Dakota, but I do remember that if your unemployment rate is around 2%, if you have tens of thousands of unfilled jobs in your state, if you have a diverse economy that people continue to work in and it continues to show tremendous promise up ahead, if you're invested in things, if your economy is invested in things like natural resources that have lasting value and will till the end of time, it just doesn't feel like a recession to me. When you're the fastest growing state in America, it doesn't feel like a recession to me. When the wages, 6 out of the last 7, maybe it's even 7 out of the last 8 years now, have grown more rapidly than anywhere in America, it doesn't feel like a recession to me. It feels like we have a little bit of a downturn here. That's obvious to everyone. But you're coming off incredible highs to get to this point that somebody says, geez, they're in a retraction period. Well, yeah. I mean, things are never going to stay at that level that was unsustainable, that growth. But when you're talking about economics and the future of the state, you're talking about 10, 20, 30, 50 years. All of us in public life in the state. And I admire this about the legislature. We joke around a lot back and forth. The majority leader was in our office yesterday, and they think we hate them and we blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, we do understand. I admire very much our citizen legislature, who folks like Todd, who I like to tease, but who run their own business and do their own thing, but they also give a lot of time, energy, and expertise to politics, to figuring out the right policy so that 30 years from now they're still saying, wow, what an extraordinary time in North Dakota. And I know you're not here for an economics address on North Dakota, but I don't think I have to set the table in that regard because it is such an exciting time to be in public service here in North Dakota. Real quick, I went through the materials and what they asked me to talk about. Let me quickly go through my career path, because from a very young age I was interested in public life. I was interested in politics. I didn't know if I'd ever run for it, but I was just drawn to it. I love history, and I love to read biography about interesting men and women who helped shape their communities, and I like to say put their thumbprint on it. Exactly the kind of people that are around this table. You would not be in this organization if you weren't the kind of person who wanted to put your mark on your workplace and on your community, and I really admire that. My first job in public service was as a district attorney, assistant DA in Philadelphia, a city I had never slept a night in. I didn't know a single person there. But when I was in law school, I decided I wanted to be a DA. I wanted to be a prosecutor in a big city. And I decided that because I'd come home for the summers. And I worked for Judge Rod Webb, who was a federal judge, but before that had been the U.S. attorney. And I went to work as an intern for him as a federal judge, and then the second and third year, between those years, in the U.S. attorney's office. And I decided that was interesting work. You could be a jerk to people, and you could just be all your competitive zeal could go into it. But the most important thing is you could do the right thing in cases. You could lead investigations and do the right thing. And so on that path, when I was getting out of law school, I thought I want to be first before I go home, I want to be a DA in a big city, because I saw on TV that would be really interesting work. And so this is how serious I was as a student. And so I applied in 3 major cities, and I got jobs in 2 of them, and I picked, this is again how serious, one was Miami, and one was Philly, and Philly had 4 seasons, and I thought, well, I'm used to 4 seasons, I'm gonna go there. Todd's like thinking, wow, I hope my kids do better than that, but that's what I decided, so I moved to Philadelphia. I moved to Philadelphia in the fall of 1993 and started in the DA's office, one of the largest in the country, 300 prosecutors. They start about 20 new people every year. And I was, the ultimate fish out of water. I came walking in, there's a kid from North Dakota, the only one without an accent. And everybody, all they want to know is first, like, what parish do you belong to? Parish do you belong to? I'm Lutheran. They look at you like, you're what? That doesn't go over huge in Philadelphia, which fast forward to when I married Kathleen, my Irish Catholic father-in-law was and still is very impressed that I'm Lutheran. Anyway, but so I started there. I didn't know the neighborhoods. I didn't know the city, and people couldn't get over it because the fix was almost in politically for everybody. Everybody knew a ward leader. Everybody knew somebody, and like, who did you know? I'm like, I think I remember the name of the DA. I think I remember her. And what I had brought to the table, I suppose, was diversity or something. They were like, hire that kid from North Dakota, and it'll be an adventure for all of us. So I started there. And I went about that work for 5 years, and it was everything that I ever hoped that it would be. the interaction with the police department and the investigators, and then just the enormity, the volume of crime that comes through that office and the cases that you work on, and the hardship and heartache of people that you work with every day. It took me 2 weeks to get over the public defender sitting on that side of the room telling me about how they were this poor begotten soul who they were representing, and just what a bad life he had and how bad I was supposed to feel. And then I started realizing, yeah, I know, but he robbed that little old lady at knife point who also lives in that same neighborhood, who doesn't have anything except for the $40 that he stole from her. And they were never looking for a fair fight. They were never looking for a fair fight. They were always looking for someone that they could dominate completely, either burglarizing them, raping them, attacking them, assaulting them, you name it. So a job that I very much wanted to do, some of them for selfish reasons, very rapidly took on a feeling of incredible public service in a community that wasn't even my community. I had never spent, as I told you before, a night before I went there, but all of a sudden you're surrounded by people who desperately need. Now, when you're the prosecutor, I know that on TV, you're the person who's trying to railroad that person so that you can run for mayor. But the reality of the work is every day, like I say, going through files and meeting with and talking with victims of crime and their families and seeing what was robbed from them. You have no idea, unless it's ever happened to you, how transformative of an experience it is to have a gun put in your ear by a crazy person you don't know anything about, and you have no idea what he's about to do. And you get to court, and then later the judge is like, well, it gets to sentencing, and they're like, come on, Wrigley. They got $10 off the guy. And you realize it's not a financial transaction. It doesn't matter if they got $1 million or a dollar. It's this. It's being robbed of your security in your community. And that had a really profound impact on me. Because even though it wasn't my city, and even though it wasn't, these weren't my people, and I didn't go to any of their parishes, my chest was like this every day. I felt so proud of the public service that I was able to provide in that community, and I loved that work. And yep, it was a competitive outlet for me. I'm a competitive person and all those things, but I got to decide what we were going to pursue, what mattered, what did justice look like in this case. And if I hadn't, well, that ignited something. I told you I had a preconceived notion of wanting to serve, but that really lit that fire for me. When I stepped down as an assistant DA to move back to North Dakota in 1998, I didn't know if I'd ever get back into law enforcement. I didn't have any way to know. But I was very blessed a couple years later when I did get that opportunity, and I was appointed by President Bush to be the U.S. Attorney for North Dakota. And I spent the next 8 years as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer in North Dakota as the U.S. Attorney. And incidentally, at the time, we had 2 Democrat United States Senators, Byron Dorgan and Ken Conrad. I know you're not that young. You're pretty young, but anyway. And you can't become U.S. Attorney unless you get confirmed by the Senate. So I had to meet with them. And the only thing they knew about me is I'd been politically active for a year and a half or so. When I got back here a couple of years, I was working with the Republican Party. And I sat down with them, and Kent was the senior senator, and he told me he had grave concerns about my appointment, which isn't what you want to hear when you're talking to the person who gets to decide if you get to have this job. You think it's over when the president says you're going to, and it's not over. So anyway, we sat and we chatted, and all I could say was, well, I was in Philly for 5 years. I was a DA, and my boss was an elected Democrat. And, we had 300 people in the office, but, I think I worked pretty hard, and I, in some ways, distinguished myself across those years, and I'll just let the facts speak for themselves. And he said, I'm going to call her, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this kind of thing. And so he called back in 2 weeks, and he said, Drew, I spoke to Lynn Abraham. And Lynn, he went through what she had said, and he kind of chuckled. He said, well, I'm left without any options. He said, I'm going to support your appointment to be U.S. Attorney. And we actually, over those years, became good friends, because I think that Senator Conrad and Senator Dorgan knew that I was very committed to the idea of federal law enforcement in the state, and I did everything I could to do it in a way that was worthy of the people of our state. And it was a privilege beyond what I can even describe. I met great people like Jennifer. And I mean that. I still run into these people all over the state, and it's still like family very much because we were committed. And there's a point to all this. We were in a committed, directed path to securing justice for the people of North Dakota through the federal courts. And some cases get reported on. And as I said, when I stepped down a little over 8 years later, 85% of this job they'll never know that you did. And that's what public service is for me. I won't lie to you. It's fun if you're standing on the front page of the paper and you're holding the championship belt for something. That's kind of fun, and your kids think that's neat. But the real pleasure of this is that 85% that people will never know. Todd knows this too. You take a vote no one will ever hear of, but you know that you accomplished something. You moved the ball down the field in an important way, and it doesn't matter who knows. Because at the end of the day, if you're in public life, if you're in public service, whether you're an elected person or you're a volunteer or something else, there will also be days where you'll be on the front page of the paper and you will not be holding the championship belt. And you have to get through those days, just like you have to get past the days with the championship belt. You've got to think about why you're doing this work. Why is it important? And I would invite all of you to think, why did you join this organization? I know you didn't just want time away from your jobs. What is it you want to do to put your fingerprint on your community, on your workplace, and up ahead? And you should never feel limited by any. I had a great speech written. It was really good. It was so organized, and it was making points every step of the way. And then I didn't have my reading glasses on, so I kind of got stuck at extraordinary time in North Dakota. The other thing about public service that and all of a sudden you got to understand, I'm a politician with a shelf life. I've got nine months left in this work, so I get to talk like I'm about to die and I'm going to write a book or something. But there are, it's a cliche from somewhere, 1,000 roads to Rome. Never believe, and you don't believe, because you've joined this organization, and sometimes people look at public service and say, well, public servants are people like Marco Rubio, who run for president of the United States. That's a public servant. Or Hillary Clinton, who's always been in jobs, in politics. That's public service. And you very, very rapidly learn in this life, if you're really paying attention, that's public service. So are the people on the rural water districts. So are the people on the county commissions. So are the mayors who don't get paid a red cent for their community, but they're the mayor, and it's constantly pulling them away from their ranch or their farm or their dentist operation, whatever it is. And they just care about the community. And no one should ever lose sight of that, because at the end of the day, whatever we do, if we're in elected office here in North Dakota, and we're working in the legislature or in state executive office or of some, you not only have to interact with those people at a practical level, you've got to recognize that your job is to very much uphold their work and make sure that the laws of North Dakota and the policy of this state empower them, because they are the most responsive, they are the most in touch with their communities, empower them to do the things for the folks that are around them. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we want, is proximate government. We've experimented with this in America. We've moved a lot off to Washington, D.C., and you feel it getting remote to you. Like you can't touch it anymore. You can't change it anymore. You can't convince people that, hey, this deficit and this debt, these things matter to us. You can't seem to grab them. Yet here in North Dakota with our legislature, they are very accessible. They don't even have offices. And that's by design. When they're in session, they're sitting out there on the floor. Anybody can come and find them, whether it's a reporter or a citizen or a lobbyist, somebody coming to try to affect policy in this state. We are proximate. You can always be grabbed. The governor, if you want to talk to the governor of North Dakota, there are two avenues. One, you can call the office and try to get an appointment. That doesn't work great all the time because it gets scheduled weeks in advance. Or you can wait for Jack to walk out to his car. We park right out there. This is one of my perks of office. We have two people have reserved seating, Jack Dalrymple and Drew Wrigley. Thank you very much. Anyway, you could stop him any day on the sidewalk out here and he'll talk to you. Stop him any day you want. He doesn't have a security contingent around him, and you can stop and ask him a couple questions. And if he doesn't have time to talk to you longer, he'll tell you, well, you know what, call my office and tell him we chatted, and you'll be able to get in there. And I see this happen more than you might imagine, and it does very much matter. So this job that I have to say that I didn't come to it by way of election initially. You all recall that John Hoeven got elected when he was governor. He got elected to the U.S. Senate, and Jack became the governor, and every other Republican in the state was already holding office, and so he asked if I had anything else to do, and I had stepped down as U.S. Attorney the year before, so here I am. That was back in 2010. I did not have any gray hair when this started. I really didn't, and I remember very much the day that he appointed me to be the lieutenant governor, which I thought I'd serve for the next 2 years, and then we'll see what happens. Well, then got past 2 years, they go by like that, and then we got to the 2012 election. And when he decided he was going to run, he asked me to run with him, and we ran and were elected that year to a 4-year term, which would be done in November. And it does go incredibly fast. I don't know, I mean, I had my ideas about this job when I came to it, but I marveled at the times that it reminds me very much of my days as a DA in some ways. You're the lieutenant governor, I like to point out, of the whole state of North Dakota, by the way, not just a county, the whole state. But it's a job very much where you can have a lot of impact, but you will not leave your thumbprint. It's just done correctly. This is a job that you will have impact. but you won't, go ahead, name the last three lieutenant governors. I mean, you know the last one, right? Jack Dalrymple, everybody remembers him. Yeah, okay. But it's not that kind of a job in public life. But it is very much a job that I can look back over the last many years and know that I've been able to influence some things that have had big impact and will in this state. A lot of it has to do with the fact that Jack and I have a very good relationship, personal and professional. We get along well, to use just a throwaway phrase. We don't see the world the same way all the time. We have very, very different ideas sometimes. But he and I interact most often. If you're the lieutenant governor and you're going to slightly even disagree with the governor, maybe wait till everybody has cleared the room, and then you go in and you talk about things. And we've built on that over the last 5 years, and it's been a privilege. And I can look at a lot of things that I've been able to influence in this job. But it is like a lot of jobs around the state. Like I say, county commissioner, or you're on a water board or something else. Don't do it for the history books, because you're never going to be there. But to know, as I get close to looking back on this, that I've been able to impact some things that matter to me in the state, it's been a test for me personally, frankly. Because there are moments, politics has that allure sometimes. You think, well, it's kind of like, what do they say, movie stardom for ugly people. And so you go into it, and it's not why I went into it. I think back to my earliest days, but you need to be reminded from time to time. You get opportunities to question yourself, why do I want to do this work? And I would encourage you to always do it for the reasons that you engaged in this organization, because you want to actually have an impact on things, and you want to have the opportunity to have, it takes connections and knowledge to, and I mean by connection, I mean relationship. You have to know people, and what you're doing going around the community and meeting with leadership and different people is wise, but it also gives you a construct for as you go forward. Who do I want to stay in touch with and access their information so that I can try to do more good in my community? It doesn't get any simpler than that. There are 1,000 roads to Rome, as they say. Don't let anyone tell you. For years, people thought, well, if you want to be a U.S. Senator, I guess you got to be the tax commissioner. Because, Byron was the tax commissioner, and then he became a U.S. Senator. Kent was the tax commissioner, and he became the U.S. Well, I guess now Heidi was the tax. I guess you do. Forget what I said. You got to be the tax commissioner if you're going to be. Politics has a way, because it gets written about a lot, public life, it gets written, it looks a little bit like you just look for that big valley where there's a river flowing down the middle of it, down the bottom of it, and then that's politics. And you get into that river. If you're the lucky person who gets in a raft in that river, then you'll go down that river and everything will be fine. That is not politics, any more than that is trying a case in criminal court case of some kind. I always used to say there's the case that we thought we had on paper, there's the case that we prepared, and then there's the case that erupted the moment our first witness was called when we got in there. You have to be able to recognize that politics is very much, in public life, in service of all kinds, is very much more like a sandhill, and you're dumping a big bucket of water on top of it, and the water, it'll find its way to the bottom for sure. It'll find its way to the base of that sandhill, but you know how there'll be little lines, they'll go all over the place. And you, in public life, or elected life, or not elected life, but in effectuating leadership in your organization, everything else, you can find that way. You put your stamp on it. Find the way. Don't let anyone else convince you, well, that guy hates you, so you're finished. That's the most famous line in all of public life. You're finished. You're done. That bill's never going anywhere because, this group's against it, or that's not going to happen because, that guy doesn't like that person, and you hear that, and that's just people's human shorthand. I'll never write a book. If I did, I would write every story I could remember of the time that I or someone else around me was told that isn't going to happen, or that's finished, or it isn't going to go this way, and here's why it can't. Because remember, before it didn't. That is failure talk, and it's also just ignorant. It's not at all the way the world works. Not at all. There's not one school you have to go to if you want to do that job. There's not one job you have to have if you're going to get that job, and there's not one group of friends or allies you need if you want to ascend to that height. That is total malarkey. It is completely false. And if you, writ large every day, turn on the television and look at Donald Trump, whatever you think about him and his candidacy for President of the United States, tell me that there was anyone alive, other than maybe him, who could have at the beginning of that charted that course and said that's the way it would have turned out. How many days did you turn it on and listen to people say, well, that's finished. You can't say that and do this. You can't have that view in the Republican Party, and it goes on and on and on. And I don't bring it up because he's got to be the guy or can't be the guy. I bring it up because it's a great example of the fact that you can chart your course. And each of you should do that in your workplace. On important initiatives, you think of something that's important to you, that you want to try to lead and try to instill in your organization or in the community, all you really have to do is decide at the beginning that you're not going to quit. I'm not here to give you a motivational speech. That's just true. I'll give you 1,000 examples of that. And it's hard. Sometimes it's harder in public life because people are quick to do that. Either, she's ascendant. She will someday, run the entire world. Or, he's done because, the Farm Bureau's mad at him, or whatever. Never accept that. It's false. It's false advertising. There are 1,000 roads to Rome, and you got to make it yours. And you have a big impact when you do that too. Big, big impact. Because people around you will watch and they'll be inspired by that. They'll say, she didn't have any of the right contacts, or she didn't have the right approach to that, or I heard that the boss didn't like her that much, and yet she still became the vice president over there. Yeah, hard work has a way, and creativity, and never, ever stopping. Ever stopping. I have an adage I started many, many years ago. Maybe it was when I was in my 30s and got appointed U.S. Attorney, and for a moment I thought, well, now I wonder how long it'll take me to be President of the United States. I didn't think that, Carly. But I did feel I was 35 and I felt like, holy smokes. And I really started in the habit of, when I went to bed at night, say a quick prayer and then end my day with "we'll see." Because in your high points, and all of us should remember this, I think, about our work generally, in the really high points, some of it just happened. Some of it you created. Some of it someone else helped create. Most of it is a blend. I always try to go to bed and say, we'll see. And if I'm having one of those mountaintop days where something went great, I would advise you, it's a good thing. Say, we'll see. Not to down yourself, but just to keep in mind that there will come a moment where you will not have the championship belt. And you will have been kicked in the teeth, either kicked yourself in the teeth or been kicked in the teeth or some circumstance, and you have to be able to say, we'll see. You've got to be able to say, we'll see, and know that things have a way of leveling. That's one of the most important things in public life. Whether you are working as a lobbyist, as an elected official, as a citizen, somebody trying to effectuate policy, I really think it's imperative to just keep in mind, we'll see. Don't gloat about what goes well, and don't despair for too long about what didn't go perfect. All right, my job, I guess I should talk about, I'm already over time, typical. There's one thing that they give you in this job. You can find the Constitution, you can go find one job that you have, and that's the President of the Senate. And the rest of it basically is up to the governor, because they're going to decide how much they want to share with you. Do they want to share authority and share oversight, or do they want you to just kind of be out to the side? And I've met my colleagues from around the United States, and I know people in both categories. And there are a lot of people who it would never be worth serving as their lieutenant governor, because you'll have a very unsatisfying experience. And I just happened to be working with someone who was not that. Probably in part, just because he's that way, but also because he held the job for 10 years. So in addition to being president of the Senate, which I do enjoy, it's a bit like being a judge. You sit and you preside over the Senate. You get to call on people when it's their time to speak. You get to, read the. You're one of probably 4 people in there that understand the rules, because most people don't want to worry about that stuff until they really need them. But it's important that you maintain those rules and the decorum in the Senate, and I enjoy that work very much, and getting to know the senators and work with them on the initiatives of our administration. You also lead the North Dakota Trade Office, which has been a privilege to lead that office. We lead trade missions, but also work on trade issues in the United States. And that trade office was started by the legislature in 2006, I believe, and international trade has grown 4 or 5 times in that time period by people, growers in North Dakota, producers, manufacturers, going on these trade missions, going around the globe and meeting with people who crave our products. And then once they start interacting and working with people from North Dakota, the rest is history. It is remarkable, and I have been so privileged to go around the globe and help. A lot of times they won't have meetings if you don't have a politician with you, because they figure that's some sort of stamp of approval or something, or that this person must be okay. They're not a federal felon, at least if the governor or lieutenant governor's there. And so I go, and I've been to China and Singapore and Ghana and Kazakhstan. I went to Kazakhstan, by the way, and I visited the cattle that they shipped over from North Dakota. Did you ever hear about this? They shipped live cattle, and we're helping them reconstitute their herd over there. And so we got there, and I was jet lagged, and they drive us for 3 hours out in the middle of nowhere to see the cattle from North Dakota. I kid you not. We jump out of the van. We're standing there in the middle of a field. I'm looking at these cattle. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This is what we came out here. I mean, good. We couldn't have seen a picture of these cattle. So we looked at the cattle, and to be, I'm a city boy. I was born in Bismarck, grew up in Fargo, but they looked scrawny to me. But Kathleen would say, who are you to talk? I'm like, okay. Anyway, so they looked scrawny to me, and we got back in the car, we went back. In the next 3 days, after seeing these cattle out there from North Dakota that they're trying to reconstitute, they fed us horse for 3 straight days. And I'm just here to tell you, if you don't remember one other thing from what I tell you this morning, it doesn't matter how you prepare it. Never eat horse. Don't ever eat horse. All right, that's what I've learned from that job. No, but that's been fantastic work. And I actually just got back from a trade mission to Israel, and it was focused on unmanned air systems. And I'm going to quit after this. I've taken enough of your time already. But unmanned air systems is something North Dakota is leading the way on drones and the development, the commercial development of drones as an industry and in the fastest growing component of aviation. And we got there by the same thing that made our ancestors turn this vast open nothingness into this fabulous state. Is a vision to look at that. And I remember said to you before, it's not always just like, well, where do you move? Well, move to a city. No, our ancestors came out to the middle of nothing, looked out here and said, that looks awesome. Look at all the potential out there. And so it's the same thing. Here we have an economy where we're very much based on agriculture and energy, so commodities. And people have been working for a long, long time to try to diversify that economy. And unmanned air systems is a fabulous opportunity to do that, create opportunity in our state, create wealth, and create a much more diverse economy. So the FAA was going to name 6 test sites around the country. They're trying to figure out ways to integrate safely the manned and unmanned air systems. And we went through a long process, and we got named as one of those test sites here a couple of years ago. The University of North Dakota State, people working on the technical aspects of this, piloting. UND is the first school in the nation that offers a certified pilot, a degree for piloting unmanned aircraft. And the list goes on and on and on. We got named, and then we've been a leader. We've had our certificates of authorization for testing at our test site are broader than anywhere else in the United States. People are coming from around the globe to test out of Grand Forks, and they're flying out of Mayville, and they're accessing the technical expertise of people up at Lake Region State, up in Devil's Lake, Wahpeton. North Dakota State University has a bunch of scientists. I was just there last week working on incredible research projects. Startup community in Bismarck, or in Fargo in particular, but Bismarck too, engaged in helping to solve the technical problems. You've got people, I walked through a company in downtown Fargo a year ago, Packet Digital. Never knew they were even getting into unmanned systems, but they work on computer chips, and 13 geeks from NDSU, scientists that would be off in the Silicon Valley. They're working right there in downtown Fargo, them and their families. Highly technical, high paid, great opportunity jobs being created all across the state of North Dakota because of drones and the opportunities in this fastest growing component of aviation. And it's just one of 1,000 different things that are kind of blossoming around the state and that are going to mean that we have a diverse and diversifying economy going forward. Like I said, it was in Israel. We were talking with a company. Their largest defense contractor is coming here in May. And we solidified that relationship on our trip to Israel. They are coming here in May. They're going to be doing testing over there. They're going to branch out from the agricultural testing they're going to be doing for precision agriculture. They're going to go into inspection of power lines and pipelines and waterways and disasters, and the list goes on and on and on. And the globe is hungry for this technology and expertise. And North Dakota is one of the hotbeds. And it gets a lot of media coverage, but more important, it produces a lot of opportunity for people coming out of our schools and other people looking for a way to do important work in our economy. So it's exciting. I have missed so much. If you didn't like the speech, the one I was going to give was so interesting. I'll leave you with this. I do want to thank you for being interested and invested in your jobs, in your cubicle, your office, wherever it is that you work. It is something to see as a privilege. It really is. And I joke. I think I'm only midlife. I hope. Who knows? Maybe someone makes a bad driving decision later. But as I look back and also look forward, I know that the most important thing is that you engage in work that you prize, that you think you can do some good at. Maybe it pays enough, maybe it doesn't. Just needs to pay a certain level, right? Maybe it provides enough upside down the road, or maybe you're there because it's going to give you some expertise to get to a different place. But find what you absolutely prize and what you recognize as a privilege in your workplace, and do what you're doing through this organization. Engage with people. The word connections or networking and all that kind of has a dirty sounding connotation. It sounds kind of cheap or something. At the end of the day, it's critical. You can't accomplish things without getting other people to join with you. I'll name drop for a quick session. One of my close U.S. attorney friends over the years was Chris Christie. He was the U.S. attorney in New Jersey, and I don't know why we hit it off. He was the chubby guy from New Jersey telling jokes in the corner, and I was the scrawny kid from North Dakota, and I think we thought each other was novel or something. But we just were starting with BlackBerrys back then, and Chris and I could never get through meetings. We were always BlackBerry. That seemed like such an incredible thing. It was like you're on the Jetsons or something back then. We were sending emails, and it was awful, and we were childish. But we did that through all of our meetings, and we got to be great friends. And over the years, we would talk about, well, what do you want to do in politics? What do you want to do? And he used to always talk about he was going to run for the governor of New Jersey, and I would point out rightly, how are you going to get elected governor of New Jersey? Because I was thinking small, like I talked to you about before. I said there's 700,000 fewer Republicans in your state than Democrats. I was somewhat familiar with that after 5 years in Philadelphia. And he maintained through the night that he was inaugurated, and Kathleen and I were there with him and his wife and a couple other U.S. attorneys. Like, Wrigley said I could never get elected governor. I did not say that. I said, how are you going to get elected governor of New Jersey? But anyway, we would talk about these respective jobs, and the governor of New Jersey is king. They are like a king. I mean, they pick everybody. There aren't a lot of boards and commissions giving you 3 people, and you got to select from them, and the list goes on and on and on. But as a result, Chris made his name as U.S. attorney, prosecuting 134, and he was 134-0 on corruption cases, federal, state, and local, because everybody had all this authority, and all you had to do was bribe that one person, and you could get a land use permit, and bribe that person, you could get a permit to do something else, and it was nonstop. And as I would describe to him the job of governor of North Dakota, as I said at the time, I said, I want to run for governor someday. And I would describe it to him, and I said, well, it was structured different. Out there, the legislature tells you this, that, and the other, or if you want to appoint a judge, there's these committees, and they put all these people together, and then you get to pick from the finalists that they select. Maybe you've never even heard of the people. And I'm going through the whole thing, and I remember him very distinctly looking at me. He's like, who the hell would want that job? He couldn't figure out, like, who would want that job? You don't have any authority to do anything. And it didn't even occur to me. I think he's completely wrong. Because in public life in North Dakota, what you have is the opportunity to figure out how are we going to get people to kind of think this? How are we going to get to move in that direction? How are we going to get people to shift our ideas on taxation? What are we going to do for regulation in this state? And how are we going to get together the broad base of people that are going to actually get that accomplished? Because I, as one person, as an office holder, or that most important business person over there, you can't get anything done. It is impossible. It is impossible in our state. Without building broad coalitions, you cannot move anywhere. And that can be frustrating if that's your mindset, if you want to be king. But it's we should be proud of that, because I think it's part of why we do have the greatest economy, even though I know we've got some challenges through commodity prices, because it's stable. Things are fortified in our state. We have a commitment through our legislative process and through our politics. We have a commitment to the things that matter most: infrastructure, education spending, the right sizing our regulatory environment, taxation that's appropriate, that's paying for the things that we need and that the government should provide. It's not all perfect. I mean, we can get into arguments up there and say, well, that's a little off, or I didn't like that bill. But on the whole, there's a reason why when they do polls, they go around and most North Dakotans say, I feel like it's on the right track. Even if they haven't voted for a single person who's in office right now, they feel like it's on the right track because they're invested in it. Because people in the state do what you're all doing. They know, I can make a difference. I guess I better dust off my shoes and get out there and do something about it. I think that's our political heritage in the state. I think that is more than anything else, the telltale of politics in North Dakota. Building relationships, never quitting because it takes a long time to get someplace. Don't get frustrated about it, and understand what a privilege it is to live in a place where things move slowly, because we understand the government and these laws, they impact all of us. Let's try our best to get it right. And let's adjust when we have to up ahead. So listen, I appreciate very much the opportunity to come in and take more of your time than I was given. I thank you very much for the invitation. And also, I say too, I'm proud to be the 37th Lieutenant Governor of the state. I've had tremendous privilege to serve North Dakota. And so people have started asking me, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, I guess I better get a resume together, because now I'm starting to get nervous. People are asking me, I feel like, do I have to know already? That'll all take care of itself. It's impossible in life to connect the dots forward sometimes, but you can always connect it backward. And when we look back, you just say, just keep working, find things that you love, and stay passionate about it, and recognize you're part of. Your thumbprint won't always be the thing that goes into the newspaper, but when you're working on it, you will always go to bed at night when you say, we'll see, and you'll always know, I had a part in that, and that made things better for our state up ahead. It is a privilege. We really do live. I do believe this. We live in the greatest state in the finest nation on the face of the earth. And I've been to Ghana, and I've eaten horse in Kazakhstan. So I'm the one who's here to tell you. So thanks for what all of you are doing, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks.